Hi all of you awesome scuba divers out there, welcome to Scuba Diving Magazine and welcome to Ask Mark, our scuba diving Q&A, where I, Mark, a former dive instructor, do my very best to answer your scuba diving questions. So if you do have any scuba diving questions, pop them down in the comment section underneath this video. Use this Ask Mark hashtag and that will get it featured in an upcoming video, and I'll do my best to answer in the meantime. Hopefully everyone had a great holiday weekend, Easter long weekend. I managed to catch a cold, so I spent most of it just suffering, but yeah, hopefully everyone had a good time. Today I'm answering a question about transmitters from Kenneth J. MacArthur. So Kenneth says, I have a Terek with a transmitter that screws directly into the first stage. Is there a benefit to having the transmitter attached to a hose first? Yes. One thing that you'll notice is that a lot of scuba divers who dive with transmitters put it on a short, like 6-inch, 15-centimeter hose, and there's a few benefits to doing that. So while yes, you can attach a transmitter directly to your first stage, the first thing that you'll notice is that, one, they tend to have quite bulbous bodies. It's getting a lot better nowadays. The transmitters themselves are getting a lot smaller as technology improves, but the first thing is that with these hose protectors, even these ones on this Apex OSHA regulator, they're quite nice and compact, but some of the real chunkier ones really do butt up and get in the way. So if your first stage just has ports that are just too close together, then you'll find that physically getting it attached is going to be quite hard. And even then, getting a spanner or a wrench to actually nip it up is going to be really, really tight. So by attaching it onto a hose, you can separate that bulbous body of your transmitter and just move it a bit further away. So that's the first thing that you'll notice. It won't affect every first stage design. It's just certain first stage designs. That's why you see a lot of them have like angled ports to try and give you a bit more space. But yeah, having assembled quite a few regulators with transmitters, yeah, it can be a tough ask to get some directly attached onto it. The second one is, especially when like the weathers or the water surface is kind of bobbing and moving, if you're trying to get back onto a rib or anywhere really, people who aren't completely familiar with your equipment are, if they're grabbing it for you to lift it out of the water, they're typically going to grab for the valve because there's not a lot else. But if they grab and they see something black and it looks a lot like the cylinder valve handle, they'll probably grab for that. If they grab for your transmitter and lift up the weight of the cylinder and your BCD, and if you have integrated weights and haven't taken them out because you're a bit inconsiderate, then all of that weight is going on your expensive transmitter, and a lot of this is just plastic, so that's just going to break. So if you have your transmitter attached onto a hose, even if they do grab for it, it is just going to bend and flex. The same with like being piled up on like other equipment on the deck of a rib. You'll see that quite frankly. They'll put all of the equipment down, like cylinder first, and then you get someone else's BCD and cylinder just piled on top of it. If it's just directly attached onto the first stage, a decent crack is going to crack your first, sorry, not your first, well, maybe even your first stage, but yeah, your transmitter is quite fragile on there. If it gets cracked on a hose, it'll take it. It'll have to be really between a rock and a hard place to then get crunched, but when it's on a hose, you've got a bit more like bend and flex and movability for it, so it is a bit more protected on a hose. Arguably, yes, you have some extra failure points, however, the flexibility is definitely beneficial. And finally, the third reason can be an issue, but when you have this behind you and you have all of your dive equipment and your transmitter is right there, there's a lot of like and equipment interference to then like broadcast that signal to your actual dive computer. Bear in mind that the broadcast range of most transmitters is only a meter or two. It's not particularly long distance. I know the Garmin ones nowadays that they work in like tens of meters. They are quite impressive, using like different sonar technologies and whatnot. But most transmitters, a meter or so. And if there's anything in between it and your actual dive computer, then yeah, it is just going to reduce that signal, and you won't get as up-to-date information as you might have thought. So having it a little bit further around, a bit closer to your dive computer, in this instance, if you've got it on your left-hand side, then it just gives it a bit more like breathing space to get that signal to your dive computer. But yeah, those are the main reasons. One, so it doesn't get damaged. That's usually the most important one. If someone's grabbing for your BCD or whatever, that they're grabbing for the cylinder valve, if they happen to grab hold of that that transmitter, it's very easy to just break that. So yeah, try and avoid that. Physically fitting it onto the first stage, because even with this one, you can see it's already bunching up against that that hose protector. So it's just feasibility. You either have to remove the hose protector, which I usually advocate, but they do have their place, and some can be quite tough to remove, especially the Mares ones. I find the Mares ones quite tricky to remove, the new ones. But anyway, yeah, it can be quite hard to physically fit a transmitter in certain configurations, and to actually nip it up can be quite tough. And yeah, to reach around any obstacles, usually like your shoulder or the back plate or something, just to reach it a bit further around. I know it kind of defeats the object of having like a wireless, hoseless situation, to actually build in a hose to move the transmitter close to the computer, but yeah, we only typically have it on like a 15 centimeter or 6-inch hose, just to give it a bit more breathing space. Yeah, it is very common to see transmitters just dangling off 6-inch hoses, and it's usually because these are easily £200-300. They are pretty expensive pieces of equipment, and yeah, you want to look after it. So having it physically bolted onto something that doesn't tend to move when it's pressurized, yeah, it makes it a real like vulnerable point for it to crack and break. So you do want to look after it as best you can, and yeah, just putting it on a hose just gives it a bit more like flexibility and immunity from like bumps and scrapes. Any other questions? By all means, let me know down in the comment section underneath this video. Use this AskMark hashtag and I'll get to it as soon as possible. I'm going to look up whether you can overdose on eucalyptus menthol, because my sinuses are currently full. But anyway, yeah, don't forget to check out our website, scubadivingmag.com. Check out the magazine and all the amazing things that we do over there. Like, share, subscribe, do all that good social media stuff over here on YouTube as well. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.